If you squint your eyes, it almost looks like real football. Preseason week 1, let's go.
You're listening to the DolphinsTalk.com podcast network.
Hello, Miami Dolphin fans, and welcome to the Same Old Dolphin Show, part of the DolphinsTalk.com podcast network. I'm Josh Katzker. With me today and every day is my brother from the exact same mother, Aaron the Brain. Aaron, say hello to the people.
Hello to the people.
We are just about there. It is just about time for the start of fake football. Not the real stuff, but the fake stuff is ready to start. Preseason, right around the corner. And, regardless of whether or not it actually means anything in the grand scheme of things, on Sunday at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, there's going to be players wearing aqua and orange with a dolphin pickle getting thrown through an onion ring on their helmet. And it is going to be football. And that's pretty great.
Yeah, and the best thing about fake football is that it means that real football is right around the corner. And so
that's ultimately what it means.
Yeah, it's an appetizer. Look, there's going to be storylines. There are things to watch. We're going to talk about that. And it will be interesting. Again, how much you can read into it, it's debatable, but at the end of the day, we're going to glean some things, and more so than anything else, it means that real football is right around the corner.
Yeah, I'm fired up about it. Listen, I'm just fired up to watch guys play football. Whether I'm terribly optimistic about everything, that's a whole other conversation. But the fact of the matter is, it's going to be people in Dolphins colors playing football, and I think that's something that anybody who's a Miami Dolphin fan is going to be fired up about. So I'm looking forward to that. We're going to get into just a tiny little bit of news here, and then we're going to look ahead at what we are hoping to see from the Miami Dolphins joint practice on Friday with the Chicago Bears and the first preseason game Sunday as the Dolphins take on the Bears in Chicago. But before we do that, a reminder to you, if you're not doing so already, make sure you're following us over on the Blue Sky or the Twitter machine or whatever it is, at Amplified to Rock, at Aaron the Brain, at Same Old Dolphins. We appreciate you following along over there. Make sure you download, rate, review, and subscribe to the Same Old Dolphin Show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, SoundCloud, everywhere that you get your podcast. Make sure you are visiting DolphinsTalk.com each and every day. It is your one-stop shop for all things Miami Dolphins. And make sure if you need Miami Dolphins gear, you are going to get it from the best place to get it, which is Caneswear.com. Caneswear.com is the spot. Miami fans shop. That's Caneswear.com. Caneswear.com. And of course, if you cannot get enough Miami Dolphins content, Dolphins Talk Extra is for you. Patreon.com/Dolphins Talk. For as little as $3 a month, you can join in, get bonus podcasts, access to our competitions, including fantasy football contest, pick'em contest, survivor pool. You get a Discord server access, all kinds of great stuff over there at Dolphins Talk Extra. And it's only $3 a month to start. Whatever it is that you want to contribute, you can contribute more than that if you want to. Come on over. We got a pretty good community hanging out over there on the Discord as well. So we hope that you will join us. And let's get into it because it's time to talk Miami Dolphins football, Brain. The news that there's a couple pieces of news that have broken since the last time we did a show. First, Zach Sealer got himself paid. And that is, I think, probably the most important thing to talk about. There were a lot of players that the Dolphins institutionally were like, no, we're not going to pay you. We're not going to extend your contract. We're not going to restructure. You're demanding more money. We're going to find someplace else for you to play. Zach Sealer comes through, and he is every bit the picture of the guy that you actually should be signing. He's a guy that you signed off of waivers, was basically, I don't know if it was a late round draft pick, was a nothing kind of player. And the Dolphins, and with him here in Miami, he has really turned himself into something. And the Dolphins gave him one contract, and then he continued to outplay that contract. And now they have extended him and given him more money, and he absolutely deserves it. I mean, there was some fear among some circles that with the absence of Christian Wilkins would mean that Zach Sealer maybe wouldn't be as good. And maybe it was his success had been a byproduct of the partnership with Christian Wilkins. Christian Wilkins leaves, goes somewhere else, gets hurt, doesn't play. Zach Sealer stays in Miami, continues to play, continues to succeed, continues to thrive. And then when it's time to get paid, he handles it exactly the right way, like a pro. He doesn't hold out. He doesn't hold in. He goes out there. He works his butt off, and he says, "Listen, I'm already blessed beyond my imagination, but obviously, this is something that I would like to have taken care of, and it gets taken care of. And now we can go forward with Zach Sealer getting some good money." Brain, what can you tell us about this signing and this extension for Mr. Sealer?
Look, it's a 3-year extension added on to the 2 years that he had left. He was under contract through 26. Now he's under contract through 29. He got $67.75 million of new money. The reported figure on the guarantees is $44 million. So it's an average annual salary of a little over $22.5 million per year on the new money. We don't know yet what the signing bonus is. Ultimately, when we know what the signing bonus is and some of the more intricate details of the contract, we'll have a better picture of how it's structured and what it means from a cap perspective. But at the end of the day, he's getting a raise. We know that Josh Moser reported that his 2-year cash flow increased from whatever it was supposed to be. It was supposed to be like 16.5 million, and now it's up to 34 million. So he's getting a big raise here over the next 2 years in cash flow, and then is under contract for 3 more years after that. You said it all. At the end of the day, like, if there was a guy that was under contract, not in a contract year, but who wanted a new contract that deserved it, it wasn't Jonnu Smith. It was, and Jonnu Smith was in a contract year. It was Zach Sealer. There was some trepidation, I think, because if there wasn't trepidation, I think this would have gotten done a long time ago. And I think, we could make the argument that if this was done a long time ago, then, perhaps the Dolphins might have been able to be a little bit more aggressive in free agency had they known that they were going to do this and potentially open up other cap space. Because this move at the end of the day is going to free up some cap space, whether it frees up, 3 or 4 million or 6 or 7 million. It all depends on how they structure things with the signing bonus. And if they added any like void years, which I don't think they're going to do because it's like a 5-year contract. But at the end of the day, there was some trepidation, I think, on the Dolphins' part of doing this because they had just been burned by Tyreek Hill and Jalen Ramsey. And even before that, Xavier Howard, like, they did this same thing, and they've done it 3 times and it's burned them every time. But Zach Sealer has not been like those guys when it comes to who he's been in the locker room, who he's been off the field. He's been the model citizen, the model teammate, and the player that you really want to be the representative of your football team. And so it's much deserved. He's been arguably a top 15 interior defensive lineman in this league over the past couple of seasons, and now he's being paid like one. As far as cash flow is concerned over the next 2 years, by getting $34 million now over the next 2 years, it currently places him 13th in cash flow over the next 2 seasons at that position among his peers at interior defensive line. And he'll probably get jumped. Like, he'll probably get jumped by a couple of players who are going to get paid. But that means that he's probably in the right stratosphere. It's probably a fair deal. And so I don't see any way to be about this other than happy that it's done, that it's behind us, that it's not something that's hanging over our head for a whole nother season. And we have one of the best and certainly the most consistent player from this Miami Dolphins defense locked in, under contract, and happy. And that's a good thing.
That's a very good thing. And, I would basically say, yeah, we've got that locked down. Let's talk some football, but we can't quite talk some football yet because while Zach Sealer has gotten himself paid, a couple of players on this Miami Dolphins team have gotten themselves hurt in the buildup to this first preseason game. Among them, Austin Jackson. Austin Jackson, one of the biggest criticisms about Austin Jackson as a player, about the extension that was given to him, is that this is a player that struggles to stay healthy. Now, it doesn't sound like the injury that he's dealing with right now is going to have him missing time in the regular season. I suppose it's always possible, but at the moment, it sounds like it's not a serious injury. They're going to be cautious with him here in training camp and preseason, but they don't expect him to miss that much time. It also sounds like a similar situation is happening with backup center Andrew Meyer. And while, again, it's not the end of the world that your backup center is going to miss time, this is his opportunity to get snaps and to get reps in game action. And to miss out on that, I think, is a tough situation for the Dolphins, especially because it sounded like by most accounts, Andrew Meyer was having himself a pretty decent little camp. And so now you've got a couple of key injuries on this offensive line already. And again, preseason. Long way to go, but we're already going to be looking at some depth issues here on this offensive line. It was already, I think it would be generous to say that the depth was a question mark on the offensive line for this team. When I think realistically, you could say the depth is bad on this offensive line. But now without Andrew Meyer and without Austin Jackson, this team is going to have to really dig deep on the offensive line throughout camp and throughout the preseason to get snaps out of, some players who probably most Dolphin fans would not want to see taking meaningful snaps for this team come September, October, and beyond.
Yeah, it's like the depth on this offensive line isn't a question mark, it's a problem. And we know it's a problem, so we don't need to ask the question of whether or not it's a problem. And the magnifying glass is going to be on it in joint practices and in these preseason games because, look, they just released their first depth chart. And already you just get to right tackle. You already are down 1/5 of your starting offensive linemen. And like, I think it's good news that they don't seem overly concerned that Austin Jackson is going to miss that they think he's going to be ready for week 1. But that means Keon Smith is going to be your right tackle. It's either going to be Keon Smith or Larry Borum, because those are your two guys that are battling it out for swing tackle, which I think is already an issue. And then, at center, your backup center was, Liam Eichenberg. Maybe it was Andrew Meyer. They were kind of battling to be your number 2 center, and now they're both out. They did sign Daniel Brunskill, who has, I guess, played some snaps at center. So maybe we'll see a little bit of Brunskill at center, or we're going to see Addison West. But this backup offensive line, like, we're going to get to this first preseason game. And at some point pretty early in the game, our offensive line is going to be likely Larry Borum, Jackson Carman, Addison West, Daniel Brunskill, and Keon Smith or Ryan Hayes. Like, it's going to get ugly real quick unless these guys perform a lot better than we're expecting them to perform. It's always, interesting once you finally line up against an opposing team as opposed to just playing against your own players. But look, the depth is a problem. And we just need to hope that there's no more injuries on this offensive line, because if there are, it's going to get ugly. It's going to get ugly quick. The offensive line isn't the only place on this team with depth issues. I think in general, that's where this team is faulty this year. Like, there are some areas, particularly in the secondary, where you question what they have at the top of the depth chart. But mostly throughout this roster, you feel pretty good about the top of the depth chart throughout the entire roster. It's just the depth, and
right. And
it's already being challenged.
Yeah. And so I think that's probably a great place to dive into what it is that we are looking for in these joint practices with the Chicago Bears that the Dolphins have coming up. Because as we start, we can just go ahead and start on the offense, because we're talking about the offensive line anyway. I think for me, on the offensive side of the ball, one of the key things that I am looking for is, how are Jonas Savaiinaea and how are Patrick Paul performing? The word out of camp is that Patrick Paul has taken huge strides, but Jonas Savaiinaea has been inconsistent. And I think it makes sense for a guard and a rookie offensive lineman to be inconsistent. I think that should be expected. The problem is there's not a lot of wiggle room behind him. Liam Eichenberg is on the shelf right now. We have no idea what is going on with him in terms of the injury situation. And as we mentioned, Andrew Meyer is hurt right now as well. So if Savaiinaea can't do the job at that position, you're now looking at a situation where you're bringing in Daniel Brunskill. And while there were a lot of people that were very excited about Daniel Brunskill and what his veteran presence would bring to the table, the reports out of camp have not been terribly promising in regards to Brunskill. Again, it's camp, it's a veteran, he's working himself up to speed. So and that's not necessarily panic stations, but it is something, it's one of those things that you're kind of taking note on, because it's something that is being reported across the board. Again, when something in camp is being reported a certain way across the board, that's when you can really start to take note on it. And that's that situation. But for me, in terms of these joint practices, what do Patrick Paul and Jonas Savaiinaea look like when they're going up against real competition? What does James Daniels look like when he's up against real competition? That is something that I am looking for on that offensive line, particularly in the joint practices, less so in the game, because the games tend to be a little bit vanilla feeling, but particularly in the joint practice, I want to make sure that these guys are holding their own out there.
Yeah, and that's all fair. And those are all guys that I want to see, particularly on this offensive line, see how they're performing, and mostly the young guys and the new guys, especially a guy like James Daniels, who's coming off of an Achilles injury. What does he look like? Does he look healthy? Does he look explosive? Does he look like a veteran who's just confident and doing the job? I mean, I've heard, I guess it's kind of been a mixed bag for Jonas Savaiinaea, but I think it's been mostly positive. And then even Larry Borum, while the reports out of camp early were bad, the reports are that it has stabilized. He has played better in recent practices. That's not to say he's a world beater or anything. I am intrigued to see, to me, the swing tackle battle, assuming Austin Jackson is healthy and you've got your starting five on your offensive line, the swing tackle battle between Keon Smith and Larry Borum is one of the most interesting and important position battles of this entire training camp in preseason. So I want to see what those guys look like. But yeah, it's really all those guys on the offensive line. Like, it's all those new guys, because you want to see Patrick Paul, who's been talked up like he's having this dominant training camp, and he's putting guys on their rear ends, and he just looks like worlds better than he did last year. You want to see that. You want to see proof of concept against other players that are not your own. You want to see your rookie that you traded up in the second round and gave up significant draft capital to get. You want to see him perform at a high level. You want to see your biggest free agent acquisition on the offensive line go out there and look solid. That's going to make you feel better about this offensive line. So those are all good points. And It'll be interesting because the Bears have a pretty solid, staunch, defensive front. Those guys are going to get tested. I think it'll be a good test for them.
Let's talk about other things that you're looking at forward to seeing, because I've got a couple of thoughts of other things that I am interested to see in joint practice and in the preseason game on offense. But what is something that you got?
For me, it continues to be the new guys, the rookies. So Kenneth Grant is being charged with a lot of responsibility right now, because right now your interior defensive line is Zach
Let's keep it
Sillard.
on offense, though. Let's keep it on offense. We'll get to defense in a minute.
Well,
let's
just
stay
on
offense.
Yeah, well, just on offense, I don't really care what Tua looks like. I don't really care what Tyreek Hill or Jalen. I know what those guys look like. I want to see what the backup quarterbacks look like.
There we go.
And I want to see the back end of this wide receiver depth chart. Like, it's pretty well established that there's 4 locks at wide receiver to make this roster, which are Tyreek, Jalen Waddle, Malik Washington, Nick Westbrook-Ikine. Outside of that, I don't think there's a lock. There's, D. Eskridge, Taj Washington, Eric Ezukama, and some of these undrafted free agents.
Theo Weiss, baby.
Yeah, Theo Weiss.
Andrew Armstrong.
Some of these UDFAs, I want to see if any of them pop, particularly in the preseason. Because for the UDFAs, for the back end of the roster guys, I think it is more about the game. Because they're only going to get so many opportunities in practice, but then in the preseason game, they're actually going to get run under the lights. Like, what do they look like under the big lights? Can they pop a big play? Like, that's where a lot of these back end of the roster, the guys that are fighting to be like spots 50 to 53 on the roster, that's where a lot of them end up making this roster or missing this roster, is by how they perform under the lights in the preseason game. So I'm looking forward to that. And then the running back room, because I want to see a step forward from Jalen Wright, who played basically a bit part last year, and they're expecting big things from him. They traded up to draft him last year. And then they brought in Alexander Madison, and they drafted Ollie Gordon. I want to see what those guys look like. It seems like a pretty competitive battle right now between Ollie Gordon and Alexander Madison. I don't know, because of the numbers, because you're keeping 3 quarterbacks, because of the, you're probably going to end up keeping at least 9 offensive linemen. You're keeping a fullback. I don't know that you're going to keep 4 tailbacks. So they went out and they gave Alexander Madison a deal, but they also drafted Ollie Gordon. I don't think all 4 of these guys, between those 2 and then Devon Achane and Jalen Wright, I don't think all 4 of those guys are going to make this roster. So I think there's a very competitive battle there at the back of the running back room as well.
Yeah, I'd like to see Jalen Wright pop a little bit, because it sounds like a lot of reports have suggested that he has not had a necessarily good camp this year. So I'd like to see him pop a little bit. But for me, the big thing on offense is those backup quarterbacks. There have been reports that Quinn Ewers has shown signs, and again, 7th round pick, so you're not expecting anything, necessarily to develop from this, but there have been reports from camp that he has shown signs of that ability to read a defense and to pick a spot and to not be thrown by what the defense is doing. There have been signs that there is a legitimate quarterback in there. And so I'm curious to see him in action. Obviously, I won't get to see that during the joint practices, because we're not privy to that necessarily. I want to hear that he's done well in that, if he gets to be out there against the Bears. But particularly on Sunday, I'm really interested to compare and contrast what Quinn Ewers and Zach Wilson look like on this offense for the Miami Dolphins, because it is starting to sound just a little bit like if that is a true battle. And again, you don't actually know that it's a true battle between those quarterbacks for the number 2 spot. If I had to guess, I would assume that it's basically locked up for Zach Wilson. But if this was a battle, the early buzz in this preseason is that Quinn Ewers might be ahead of Zach Wilson. So what does that look like in the game? That's something that I'm curious to see. We're going to take a look at what we're looking forward to on the defensive side of the ball in just a minute. But Brain, I want to remind everybody again that Dolphins Talk Extra is the place to be, because not only are we doing extra podcasts, not only do you get access to the Discord, during the regular season, we are going to be doing live watch-alongs throughout the season, so you can come and hang out with us while we watch the game. We can interact. We can have a good time. We're going to be doing call-in shows with us and Mike. There's so much going on over there at Dolphins Talk Extra. So if you go to patreon.com/Dolphins Talk, you can sign up today for as little as $3 a month. Come in, check it out. If you don't like it, get out of there. But, we think you're going to have a good time hanging with our crew over there on the Discord and on the Patreon. And plus, if you're entered, you're part of Dolphins Talk Extra, you're immediately entered to win any of the contests that we've got coming up. So it's a good time over there. All right, let's take a look at the defense. Brain, you sort of hinted at it earlier, so I'll open the door and let you run with it. Talk to us about how much you are hoping to see from Mr. Kenneth Grant.
Yeah, I think, look, Kenneth Grant has a huge responsibility. One of the other places where the Dolphins don't necessarily have a ton of depth is the interior of their defensive line. It's not that they haven't put any resources into it. I mean, they used 3 draft picks on interior defensive linemen. The problem is that that's 3 rookies, and we don't really know what we're going to get out of them. And outside of them, and then Zach Sealer, you really don't have much. You've got, Matt Dickerson, Matthew Butler, and these are guys that are trying to battle just to make the roster. So, like, you drafted Kenneth Grant 13th overall. He needs to be a difference maker, and he needs to be a difference maker right away. You also have Benito Jones, and Benito Jones will definitely play a role, but he's mostly a nose tackle. So when you go even fronts, like, is Benito Jones going to be in there? No, I don't think so. I think you're going to need Kenneth Grant. Is Kenneth Grant going to play some nose? I don't know. Maybe he played some nose in college. Is he going to be a guy that plays as an odd front end? I don't know. I want to see how they're going to use him. And I want to see how effective he is. Because if he's effective and he's the guy that can play, let's give him 40 snaps a game, then I think then we can all kind of take a deep breath, because between him and Sealer and Benito Jones, you can kind of fill in the rest of the pieces with the other rookies, with your Jordan Phillips and your Zeke Biggers. And if Matt Dickerson or Matthew Butler make the roster, like, you can kind of fill in the pieces. But if Kenneth Grant is not ready to be a significant contributor and a big time snap taker early on, then I have major questions about the interior of the defensive line. So I really think that he is one of the most important pieces of this Dolphins defense this season. So seeing him get off to a good start and having good reports coming out of joint practices and in the preseason game would be huge.
Yeah, I agree. I want to see what that group looks like as a whole. But for me, the bigger question is what this cornerback room is going to look like. Are we going to see Storm Duck prove that, yeah, this is a guy that is going to be cornerback 1 for this team? Are we going to see a guy like Ethan Bonner step up? Are we going to see some of these other guys in that cornerback room step up? Are we going to see John Saunders, who was guaranteed $100,000, right after the draft when he was signed as a UDFA? Are we going to see him pop? I am really genuinely curious to see what the depths of that secondary are going to look like for this Miami Dolphins team. Do we have depth there? That room is shrouded in mystery. I think the it's easy to look at it and go, there's nothing here. The only way that there is going to be something there for the Dolphins, unless they go out and sign one of the, the couple of remaining free agent vet cornerbacks out there, is if these young cornerbacks that they have there that they are taking a flyer on, if those guys can step up and become something. So we had Kader Kohu develop as a UDFA and turn into something. He's gone for the season. Storm Duck is another guy that has done that. Who is the next Storm Duck? Who was the next Kader Kohu? That's what I'm looking for on Sunday versus the Bears.
Well, all they've got are candidates, because none of these guys were drafted. Whether it's Ethan Bonner, whether it's Isaiah Johnson, Saunders, none of these guys were drafted. So, if they make the roster, they've got the inside track of being the next, Kader Kohu or Storm Duck. I do want to see Storm Duck, because the way they've talked about it, Storm Duck has been playing at a very high level, and it's not like he's not going up against anybody. He's going up against Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. So, if he can do that, well, what does he look like against a little bit different body type receivers that Chicago has in Rome Odunze and in DJ Moore, but maybe not as fleet of foot or as twitchy as the guys that he's going up against in Miami. So I definitely want to see what Storm Duck looks. But at this point, the way it's been talked about, Storm Duck's locked up a starting job. Storm Duck it sounds like it. At this point, Storm Duck is going to be one of your two starting corners, save for injury. My question is,
are you saying, this is right there. Are you saying that Brian Norcross is predicting Hurricane Storm Duck?
Wow, we're going Brian Norcross in the year of our Lord 2025.
Listen, I haven't lived in South Florida for 25 years.
Well, at least you didn't say Bill Kamal.
I don't even.
No, don't worry about that. Google it. Anyway, my bigger question is cornerback 2, because right now on the depth chart, CB2 is Kendall Sheffield.
Baby.
And that's ahead of Jack Jones. But the reports out of camp are that Jack Jones, while he's up and down and he's a bit of a gambler and he'll make a big play and he'll give up a big play, I think he's gonna end up being your cornerback 2. And then I'm intrigued because we saw a report, I think it was from Omar, that there's something weird going on with Mike Hilton, who they just signed. And he's been playing behind Cornell Armstrong. Cornell Armstrong has been your nickel, and Cornell Armstrong hasn't played a snap in this league since 2022. And so it's just you got a UDFA who has limited snaps from last season you're going to be your cornerback 1. Kendall Sheffield has been a role player who hasn't played more than 50 some odd snaps in the last couple of years. He's your CB2 right now. And then your nickel corner is a guy who hasn't played a defensive snap since 2022. You could say whatever you want to talk these guys up, but if it works out, great. I'm not saying that it can't work out, but if this is your plan and your plan is for this to work out, it's not good planning. If it works out, you stepped in shit and got lucky. So I fully expect Jack Jones to step up and become your CB2 at some point with Storm Duck. I hope that there's not an injury that's not being disclosed about Mike Hilton, and that eventually Mike Hilton ends up being your nickel. If that's the case and Storm Duck is the truth, then I'm okay with that. I'm not feeling great about the cornerback room, but I'm okay with that, especially if you're going to be playing a lot of 3 safety looks in the regular season. We'll talk about the safety room a little bit. But then, the odd man out, because even Ethan Bonner's, you're getting positive, because, it's training camp, it's preseason, it's Ethan Bonner season. You're always going to hear positive things about Ethan Bonner.
Heard they got a fast white boy.
But the guy that you are not hearing anything positive about, who right now can't get onto the field because he's injured again, is Cam Smith.
Is Cam Smith on this 53-man roster?
I mean, if they're making the 53-man roster today, I don't think he makes it. But they're not making it today. If there's any more injuries in this cornerback room, they're just going to have to keep him just for sheer numbers. I think he's probably cornerback 5 or 6 right now. And then I don't know if they're going to keep 6 cornerbacks. And so it like there is a numbers game to it. There's also some financial responsibility because he is on his rookie deal with some guaranteed money. And so if they cut him, like you lose like $850,000 worth. It's nothing significant. It's nothing that would, preclude you from cutting him. It's nothing that would say, well, you can't cut this guy because you're going to lose too much cap space. But it could be the deciding factor if it's Cam Smith or Isaiah Johnson for like the last cornerback spot. But right now it's not looking good for Cam Smith, especially because he's injured again and he can't get on the field.
Yeah. Well, Cam Smith is a very sad story, but he's the next in line on the long list of draft busts for the Miami Dolphins. But what are you going to do?
By the way, I don't know who you're referring to. I mistake. We keep saying Cam Smith, but I think the guy that we're actually talking about is Cam Igbenogany.
Oh, you're right. That I believe that is how you pronounce that last name. Smith is pronounced Igbenogany.
That's correct.
So good. I'm glad thank you for calling me on that. That is something that I am working on. I do believe names are important. I do believe it is important to make sure that we pronounce Cam's last name correctly. I will not make that mistake again. Yes, you're correct. Smith, Cam Igbenogany. Brain, are there other things on the defensive side of the ball that you're looking forward to in this joint practice with the Bears? Do we want to see Minkah Fitzpatrick pop? Do we want to see? Because I don't imagine we're going to see a whole lot of him on Sunday. But what are you hoping? Anything else on the defensive side of the ball?
I want to see the safety group because we're going to be without Ashton Davis. I don't know. Like, are we going to see Ife Melifonwu? I would like to see him pop. I don't know if we haven't seen Dante Trader yet, so I don't think we're going to see him, the rookie. Another corner that we didn't mention was the rookie Jason Marshall. I'm interested to see what the rookie draft picks look like in general. But then, how about some of these other safeties that are vying to make the roster? Elijah Campbell brought back again. Mostly a special teams player, but might be asked to do some things. Patrick McMorris had a great training camp in preseason last year. They carried him a little bit on the roster. Was he mostly on the practice squad or was he mostly on the roster? I don't know. I think he was mostly on the roster and played some special teams. The word out of camp, like Anthony Weaver mentioned in a press conference the other day, he kind of let it slip, that we've got a lot of depth in the secondary and there's a lot of different things that we can do, especially if we're playing 3 guys at the same time. So if the Dolphins are going to be playing 3 safeties at the same time, they're going to be playing some big nickel. Well, who's the third safety? Especially if Ashton Davis, who's currently in a walking boot, isn't ready to go at the start of the season. So then you've got Minkah Fitzpatrick, you've got Ife Melifonwu. Who's the third safety? Is it McMorris? Is it Campbell? Is it Trader, who hasn't really gotten out there on the field yet as a rookie? I'm intrigued to see kind of who pops out of that group.
Yeah, I'm interested in seeing it too. There's a lot that I'm interested in seeing. I'm interested in seeing the punter competition between Stonehouse and Bailey. I've been thinking a lot about this because it seems like they've been pretty evenly matched. Listen, I'm here for punter talk.
You know what it's going to come down to.
What is it going to come down to?
Who holds it better?
That's right. Well, we know that Jake Bailey is an elite holder, based on his track record. I think Stonehouse has his work cut out for him, because he has to. Like, I think if all things being equal, they're the same. I think Stonehouse has to be better than Bailey to get the job. Maybe, but then again, who knows? This Dolphins team has done all kinds of things, so we'll see. We'll see what happens there. But either way, I'm just excited that Sunday afternoon we get to sit down and watch some Miami Dolphins football for a few hours against the Bears. And the best part about it is I don't have to get upset about it. It's preseason football.
I don't know. I could get very upset about it. Like if we're in the first quarter of that game and the offensive line is just getting thrown around, it could be pretty upsetting. If Roma Dunze burns Storm Duck on like the first offensive possession for the Bears, it's going to be pretty upsetting. We could very easily get upset at a preseason game.
Well, I'll say this. The big thing for me is let's get out of the game with everybody healthy, with the same number of healthy players that we came into it with. That's what I want. I don't want anybody getting hurt, no big injuries. Let's avoid it. Let's try to maintain. Somebody asked a question in the chat earlier tonight, which, by the way, if you're not watching live, that's a good reason to watch live. You can participate in the chat, and one of the things that I didn't mention earlier about Dolphins Talk Extra, we do an additional show in the off season. As we're building up to the season, we're not live on Mondays for everybody. We are live on Mondays for folks at Dolphins Talk Extra. So if you've been thinking about it, let that be a little extra care for you. But somebody asked why we think the Dolphins suffer so many injuries. I don't know that the Dolphins, like, I would have to really go and look team by team to check in to see if the Dolphins actually are suffering more injuries than other teams. What I can say is that where other teams, when they suffer injuries, they have found ways to mitigate the injury and the effects of that injury significantly better than the Dolphins have thus far. The Dolphins have, and I don't know if it's a product because of the Mike McDaniel system or whatever it is, they have built such a specific machine that works so specifically with the correct parts and the correct timing and all of this, that as soon as one little part of that gets thrown off, the whole thing falls apart, and they've had a hard time recovering from that. So that's kind of my answer to that question. I don't know that the Dolphins actually do suffer more injuries from others, but I could go down that rabbit hole with you and talking about how there are questions about the Miami Dolphin training staff, and there are questions about Baptist Health, and there are questions about all that. We can get into conspiracy theory stuff like that, but that's a whole other show, and I'm not going to get into that tonight. So
I want to touch.
Anyway, that's what I think.
Touch on that.
Please agree. Don't take us down the conspiracy theory rabbit hole.
No, not the conspiracy.
Please don't get out your tinfoil hat.
No, not the conspiracy theory stuff. I agree with you. Without looking at the numbers and going team by team, I don't know that the Dolphins have more injuries than other teams. Injury luck is a thing, and that it exists. And I think the Dolphins, maybe the last couple of years, certainly in 2023, had poor injury luck. I would say it's two things. Number one, and we've talked about this, I mean, they rely on that. They've brought in a lot of guys who have injury histories. So it's like when guys with significant injury histories get injured, that's one reason why you have a lot of injuries. The other thing, to your point about being able to mitigate those injuries, I think a lot is made of like you said, with, Tua gets hurt and like nobody else can run this offense because it's so complicated. No, nobody else could run this offense when Tua got hurt because your backups were Skylar Thompson and Mike White, and then Tyler Huntley, who you signed off the scrap heap, who was just learning the offense. Like, that's the issue. The issue is your depth. This team has had no depth we're going to go on 3 years now, and that's because of how it was built, because they started to build it the right way. They got overexcited. They went all in without having a proper foundation built of depth. And so what you have is you have a bunch of frontline starters, a lot of talent, but then when those talented players get hurt, you don't have the depth. And so you feel those injuries more than what other teams feel, because other teams are building deeper rosters, because there's always going to be an attrition game in this sport. You're going to have injuries. You hope that they're going to be limited. You hope that they're not going to hit you at the spots that you are the thinnest, and you hope that they're not going to come at the times that are the most crucial. But it's going to happen, and you're going to need to have contingencies in place. And this team hasn't had the contingencies in place because they have not had enough draft picks, and they have not drafted well, and they just don't have the depth. And the team this year is built much in that same way, that if you look at the front of the top of the depth chart from top to bottom on this roster, and you say, if these guys stay healthy, there is absolutely a pathway for this being a playoff team. The problem is that there is a high likelihood that not everybody's going to be healthy. And when they're not healthy, who are the guys that are coming in after them? We're already seeing the injuries in two spots where they are the thinnest, which is the offensive line and at cornerback. And those are going to be potentially big time problem areas for this team. And if they get any more injuries there, it could get ugly real fast.
So there you go. So that's going to wrap us up for this episode of the Same Old Dolphins Show. We'll be back on Monday for Patreon subscribers at Dolphins Talk Extra. So patreon.com/Dolphins Talk. We'll also be back next Thursday for everybody here on the Dolphins Talk YouTube channel. By the way, if you're not subscribed to the Dolphins Talk YouTube channel, do that. Constantly good stuff coming through with Mike and Tom. Marissa Marino is killing it. Just did an interview with Ryan Clark of ESPN. There's more interviews coming. So make sure you're subscribed to the Dolphins Talk YouTube channel. Make sure you're turned to the podcast, and make sure that you are going to caneswear.com. Make sure you're hitting up everybody, because this is a good time of year. It's a positive time. It's still summertime. We're enjoying ourselves, and football is coming back. One last note. For those of you who are maybe on the fence thinking about Dolphins Talk Extra, Aaron and I did a bonus show earlier this summer talking about Ween's seminal album, Quebec, the Dolphins Talk Extra music show. We have gone ahead and made that episode public to everybody because that album just turned 22 years old. We did a review of it, and we had a lot of fun doing it. So check that out, because that's free for everybody. I'll even put a link here in the comments so that anybody can go check it out if they want to. But it's a whole lot of fun over there. And again, you can join that fun for as little as $3 a month. That's going to wrap us for this episode. We will be back next week, twice for Dolphins Talk Extra, once for everybody else, but we're looking forward to being your ear. We got Dolphins football on Sunday, so go out there and enjoy it. Until then, take care of yourselves and each other. And as always, go Dolphins!
Just comes down to who holds it better.